Japan is cracking down on immigration. The new president of the ruling party, Sanae Takaichi, who looks set to be elected prime minister by the parliament, said immigration was to blame for rising crime and unfair competition with Japanese workers.
This is strange, isn't it? Isn't it unfair? Unfortunately, with the increasing number of foreigners in Japan, we're seeing and hearing stories like this every day. And because Japanese people are patient, everyone just swallows what they say. However, I want to take this opportunity to say that this is just not good and we have to stop it.
She said she wanted to go back to zero, pause immigration and rethink the whole policy.
As for me, I want to have a calm, mutually considerate relationship with foreigners. How we can live together, I intend to reconsider it completely. I plan to think about it from zero again, because year after year, the culture between us and everyone else is so very different, yet people are being brought in all together. To keep bringing them in, this policy we must pause and reconsider. Those who come with economic motives and claim to be refugees, such people will be properly sent home. Also, regarding those who overstay illegally, they too will be strictly required to obey the law.
Takayishi, a self-professed fan of Margaret Thatcher, wants to address both issues with migrants and tourists, as well as focusing on rebooting the Japanese economy. The anti-immigration party Sanseito has soared in support among the Japanese, forcing other parties to take voters' concerns more seriously. Japanese media is focused heavily on Britain's troubles with its own immigration policy, and a movement inspired by the Raise the Colours campaign took off in Japan last month. Takayishi dedicated more than half of her policy speech to migration-related issues, saying foreign tourists had assaulted deer in her home region of Nara. She vowed to do something about, quote, people from abroad taking pleasure in trampling on Japanese feelings.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponize against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
The Japanese have been furious in recent months following reports of deals signed with African countries to bring in migrant workers.
The current policy is to accept 100,000 Bangladeshi immigrants from 4 cities, and I thought there would be 50,000 more Indians on top of that. But then I looked at some of the English media, and it was 500,000. It's not what we want. I don't want it either.
Western media has branded Takayishi a nationalist and conservative on social issues.
The election of Takayishi probably reflects a shift towards the right, a more sort of nationalist type of politics in Japan, which has been going on really, I think, probably since the 1990s, so it's not a new trend. But in the past couple of years, the people who've been elected the leaders of the LDP generally come from the more liberal wing of the party. So I think this is significant within the party's politics to say that the right to recapture the leadership, which they haven't really held, I think, really since Prime Minister Abe. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the relationship between Takaishi and Donald Trump evolves. I think in terms of ideology, they seem to be closer bedfellows than Trump and Ishiba. Obviously, they share quite a nationalistic agenda. They've both said things that are pretty hostile towards the foreign residents and population of their respective countries. They're both people who have been on record questioning the right of the media to hold politicians accountable and to scrutinize political leaders. So that seems like something things that they have in common. But on the other hand, she's talking about wanting to revisit the deal that was done over tariffs to reduce the amount that Japan has promised to invest in the United States. And she's also a woman over the age of 40, which is not a demographic that Donald Trump tends to do very well with. I think the fact that a woman has been elected is obviously a milestone in Japan, and perhaps seeing a woman achieving top political office will be something that makes younger women in Japan think that it's possible to achieve top-level jobs in the economy and in politics. But given Takeshi's own profile as somebody who's a social conservative, who has quite unfeminist views on women's capabilities and what roles they should play in society, I don't hold my breath for any radical changes under her premiership. And actually, we've seen conservative women elected in other countries in the past who've actually done very little for women's rights. Margaret Thatcher springs to mind as a politician who in 11 years in government didn't promote women to the senior positions within her administration. So I expect Takaishi not to really make much difference, actually. The fact that she has this more nationalist reputation is probably going to make her administration harder to deal with for some of Japan's neighbours. Her visits, for example, to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, which is the war memorial in Japan where a number of war criminals are also interred. This is going to make relations with China, South Korea, other countries that are occupied by Japan more difficult. I think in terms of economics, her policy agenda seems to be somewhat different from the current administration. She wants to see more fiscal stimulus, more spending as a way of trying to kickstart the economy. I think this is not something new, right? This is the ideology of Prime Minister Abe and pretty much what most LD prime ministers have done since the 1970s. I mean, I think in order for this to have a big impact on foreign policy, she has to last in power for more than a short period of time. I think for a lot of leaders around the world, when they look at Japan and they see there's a new prime minister, they don't hold their breath that this person is going to be around long enough to actually have a significant impact on foreign policy. So I think, first of all, the thing she really needs to deal with is making sure she's got a legislative coalition to get legislation through.
But it appears voters across the democratic world are demanding their politicians put their own countries first and reduce immigration. Takaishi is likely to become Japan's new Prime Minister in the coming days. Her ruling LDP party has lost its majority in the parliament, however, meaning her premiership will face a vote. Nick Dunning, GB News.